Welcome to the CCVO Capacity Building webinar series. I'm Tracy Braun, Manager Programs at CCVO. This series is focused on topics that will help nonprofit professionals and the organizations they work with build their capacity and strengthen their impact. Thank you to our sponsors, Land Solutions and Altitude Communications, for their support of the CCVO webinar series.
Welcome to CCVO's new capacity building webinars, created to provide you with learning and resources on demand and on your schedule. These webinars will cover topics of interest to nonprofit professionals, all at no cost to you, thanks to the generous support of our sponsors. With me here today are Mark Allison of Land Solutions and Marshall Anderson of Altitude Communications to share a bit about why they've chosen to partner with CCVO. Mark?
Thanks, David. Land Solutions is really proud to help CCVO present these webinars as flexible learning opportunities for the nonprofit sector. As an IT solutions provider, Land Solutions offers small to medium-sized organizations the flexibility to work how they want, from wherever they want, by leveraging the power of the cloud. So sponsoring these webinars is a natural extension of our work.
Very good, thanks. Marshall?
Yeah, we feel the same at Altitude Communications. We're a cloud provider of telephone and communication services, and we saw the direct link between the expert content of these webinars and what they're trying to promote, which is productivity and efficiencies to the viewership. And we were able to marry that with our own passion for driving those same productivities and efficiencies to our customers by leveraging our platforms. So we're very happy to sponsor this programming.
Thanks to you both. These webinars would not have happened without your generous support. If you're new to CCVO webinars, please take a minute to look through the complete listing of topics and recordings available on our website.
This webinar is pre-recorded, but that doesn't mean you can't ask questions. We encourage you to add your questions to the chat window because we'll be sharing them with speakers for a follow-up blog post. You'll be able to find the link for the post and the recording of this webinar on our website after the release date. For this webinar on leadership while in crisis, we're joined by Mark Frizzell. Mark began his career working in the nonprofit sector before completing his MBA and growing through the ranks of the airline, pipeline, and construction industries. As an independent consultant, Mark works with nonprofit boards and provides leadership to HR professionals to build stronger strategies and connections with their employees and teams. Thank you for joining us today, Mark.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with the CCVO community during these very challenging and unprecedented times. As you've mentioned, I've led large and small teams for 25 years, and this is not my first crisis situation that I've been through. I learned something from each and every one of them, and currently I'm consulting in the healthcare sector, and I'm working with clients who are on the front lines of the current COVID-19 crisis. So I would like to share with you some practical ideas that I'm sharing with these and other clients all facing the same crisis. In our brief time together today, I really want to help you create a strategy to improve your leadership effectiveness during this or any other crisis. I believe, and I say this on a daily basis, that it all comes down to leadership. It is precisely in situations like this, in difficult times, that we need strong leaders capable of stepping up and providing vision, inspiration, empathy, and leadership for their teams. Let me encourage you. I believe that it is in moments like these that you truly become a leader, and this is your moment. I want to walk you through 4 ways for you to grow in strength as a leader. For those of you in HR who support leaders, consider how you can encourage them in these areas. And for a moment, I want to speak to you specifically. If you're an HR leader, you have a unique and expansive role to come alongside and support and guide the leaders within your organization. Often they'll trust you and your wisdom more than others. I know this from being a senior HR leader myself. So I encourage you to consider how you might pass these lessons along to the leaders within your own organization so that they too can increase their organizational effectiveness and their leadership effectiveness during these difficult times. I encourage you to pass this webinar along to your leaders. Perhaps consider yourself as an amplifier of this message. There are 4 areas of strength I want to share with you and some very practical applications. We'll talk about personal strength, how you take care of yourself first. There are 4 ways to be during this crisis. Second is empathetic strength, how you show up to and support your team There are 4 messages for your team. Guiding strength is having a plan of action. There are 4 conversations for the leader to have with their team. And lastly is communication strength. How do you manage and communicate with your team from a distance? Let's set the stage and talk about having a proper perspective on this or any other crisis first. Our actions follow our beliefs. It's as simple as that. So what you believe about this crisis and about your organization, about your people, and about your own well-being will inevitably shape your actions. What you believe is your own responsibility in this will shape your actions and the outcomes. So let's start with getting a proper perspective on the crisis. On the screen, you'll see 2 Chinese symbols that make up the word crisis. They're commonly explained as danger and opportunity. It was JFK during the presidential campaign of 1960 who popularized this literary trope. It sounds very motivating, danger and opportunity. And while I do agree that every crisis presents both danger and opportunity, the actual meaning of the characters is somewhat inaccurate in that description. A simple check on Wikipedia confirmed that the first character does indeed mean dangerous or precarious. However, the second symbol in the context of the word actually means a changing point. This is a very important distinction or difference, that it is a changing point. It's a point in time where everything changes. And you need to view a crisis as a change management event. Right now, many things are changing. How we work, our economy, our social lives, our recreation, our relationships. Your job right now is to guide and support your team through the change. So the role of the leader is to lead the way, cast the vision, bring order to the chaos, and defend the troops against fear. So if you go into that with this mindset that this is a change opportunity, it'll frame the way that you lead your team. So I want to challenge you to examine and, if needed, change your own mindset to see this as an opportunity for change. It's an opportunity for individual and team development. It's an opportunity for your people to step up and really contribute. And when people go through change, they require special care and attention. And I will show you some of those strategies today. The real change, the only one you can actually control, is within yourself. So let's start there. The first person you need to attend to in a crisis is yourself. As we say in the airline business, put on your own oxygen mask before helping those around you. This is for a reason. If you aren't strong, you can't support anyone else. This doesn't mean that you don't feel the trauma, somehow that you're immune to the fear, anxiety, or the like. What it does mean is that you need to deal with it in a healthy way first. I like to say it's all about you because it's not about you. So let me say that again. It's all about you because it's not about you. You need to start with helping yourself before you can help or lead anyone else, which is your true purpose, to help others. Understand that you have to take care of your own needs and give yourself permission to do that. I describe this as the pebble in the pond. You're the pebble. All you're in control of really, ultimately, is yourself. But when you jump in and make a splash, the ripples continue to the edge of the pond. The bigger the pebble, the bigger the ripples. So therefore, first, be practical. How is your nutrition, your exercise, your sleep, your family, and your personal time? This is not a time to burn the candle at both ends, as tempted as you may be to do that. You're no good to someone if you're burnt out. This crisis could last and likely will last for months. Think of it as a marathon. Are you pacing yourself for the full race? Next, be honest with yourself. If you need to get away and have a moment in private, then do it. Find someone you can confide in. Use your employee family assistance programs or EAP resources, or your friends or colleagues outside your organization. I would caution you to be careful of downloading your stress onto others within your organization, and especially not onto those that you lead. The third is to cultivate awareness. So be aware of your stress reactions, your mood, and your temperament. I'm not asking you to be perfect or bulletproof. I'm saying you need to lead yourself first before you can lead anyone else. And lastly, be real. Leaders can have two equally damaging reactions to a crisis. So first, they may fall apart. They may confide in their direct reports or peers and become dependent and lose their credibility. Or secondly, they often show up so starched and unaffected, as if they're wearing a Teflon suit that no one actually believes in them. So either way, your credibility is shot. The point is, be real with yourself. Get support. We all need it. So you can show up to your team in strength. By you showing up with your team in strength, you'll instill confidence in them. So let's talk about how you show up with your team in a way that's both strong and authentic. Once you've gotten your own house in order and determined how you will show up, you're ready to confront your team. Before we get to the more practical matters of having a plan, communicating, and working in a new way, you need to connect with your team in a way that builds trust. You do this by demonstrating empathy. So let's talk about 4 ways you show up to your team and the resulting 4 messages I'd like you to share with your team. The first way to lead with empathy really is to be honest. First thing to do is be honest about the situation and what's going on. I like to say that the first one to the truth wins. This means that if you show up to lead in a crisis and you sugarcoat or you deny the severity of the situation, you're done. Everyone knows what's going on and what's at stake, and your team's waiting to hear if you will acknowledge that and tell the truth, and they'll see how you handle it. I've heard a number of stories from current clients and colleagues and friends about how their leaders botched this very important step in the early days of the crisis. What happened was they stood up and acted as if everything was okay and that everything would be all right, and their credibility went to 0 with a bullet. So don't sugarcoat the truth, just tell it like it is. Everything is not okay, and yes, many things are and will change. This isn't to be all doom and gloom, but be realistic. Let's face it, your team already knows it, but for some mysterious reason, they need to hear you say it to validate their own concerns, and in so doing, it validates your credibility. It sends a signal that they can trust you. So the message here is, this is the truth about the situation. If you've already stumbled on this important step, the good news is it's not too late. Get your team together in a meeting virtually and hit the reset button. Acknowledge your own anxiety and your awareness of how much is changing and how fast it's changing and what's at stake, which takes us to the second point, demonstrating vulnerability. Employees and team members want to follow a human and not a robot. You need to let them know that you feel this too. It doesn't mean to have a breakdown or melt into a puddle, but express that this too is affecting you and your family, that you share their concerns for the future, for your health, for your job, for your organization. The message here is, I feel this too. This is also an opportunity to show compassion, but compassion is actually empathy in action. We'll talk later about how you demonstrate that compassion. Remember, true vulnerability takes strength and courage. It means moving ahead in the face of danger. Now, before we move on, let me just take a moment and talk to you about what your team might be feeling. In fact, what you might be feeling right now. You may have noticed that at this particular period in the COVID crisis, people are starting to become weary. Crisis and change are much like the process of grief, where one experiences denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. These are the 5 stages of grief made famous by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in 1969. In fact, I believe that any time we're forced to give up something, such as our current way of working, living, and socializing, we will experience these same dimensions. So we don't have a lot of time here to go into depth, but you as a leader would be wise to familiarize yourself with the grief model. The other resource that I would suggest is to familiarize yourself with the William Bridges transitions model. In it, he explains how during a change, there is a period of letting go of the old. And then the person enters this neutral zone before embracing the new reality. The end of this letting go period, one can experience a sense of hopelessness and depression. So you may have employees entering this stage right now as the pandemic and social distancing measures drag on. So they may feel like this will never end, and the response may be, so what's the point? So what do you do as a leader? As a leader, you cannot change the way people feel, or you cannot speed them through this process. Don't try to cheer people up. This is the time to be authentic with your people, to check in on them very regularly, to be a listening ear, and to continue to lead them into the future. You too are likely to experience these same steps in the grief cycle. So be aware and allow yourself time and space for this, and practice good self-care. At this time, using and pointing your team members to their employee and family assistance resources would be a very wise thing to do. So let's return to the list on how we can lead with empathy. The third point is to be humble. You don't wear a cape and you don't have a magic wand, but you do have skills, resources, and a great team around you to work your way through this. So admit to your team that you don't have all the answers. Let your team know that this will take an all hands on deck approach and we will depend on one another. This is not the time, contrary to popular culture, for heroes. It's a time for teamwork. Invite them to join you in the arena. The message here is, I need your help. And the fourth point is around trust. And I'm not referring to their trust for you that will follow. I'm referring to you trusting your team. You need to have and start with a mental predisposition that you will trust your people. This is not a time for micromanaging. That is trust eroding behavior. The message here is, we can do this together. This is a time to give the benefit of the doubt. We'll talk about what this practically looks like when we talk about how you manage your team from a distance. But for right now, let it suffice that you need to signal that you both need everyone on your team and that you're trusting that they'll all step up. This gives your team members a special sense of safety through inclusion. So let's review. Here are the 4 messages or 4 declarations you need to make. First is, this is the situation. The second is, I feel this too. The third is, I need your help. And the fourth is, we can do this together. Once you've made these 4 declarations, you've earned the right to lead. Your people will listen. They'll know you get it, you trust them, and you will have their confidence. So let's talk about the 4 conversations for the leader to have with their team in a crisis. There are 4 areas you need to focus on, and you need to focus on these in a particular order. So I want to share with you an adaptation of my best employer model. The model provides an excellent framework to guide you through leading in a crisis. And to that end, if you follow it, I believe you will build employee loyalty in the process. Remember, a crisis is a change management event. So this is the MFI Best Employer Model. I found in my work that there are 4 key questions that employees need answered in order to be able to connect with an organization. What I've learned is that if the questions are answered sufficiently, employees will use their skills and abilities to contribute to the organization. And once they've had the opportunity to fully contribute, their engagement and their ownership of the organization will go through the roof. So this applies equally in a crisis, if not more so. In a crisis, these 4 questions will give employees stability and get them on board to participate with the team in the tough times. It's also the information that employees need to adapt to change. Essentially, it is a solid change management strategy. To make this memorable and for ease of recall, I've used the imagery of a compass rose. The compass rose exists to help you orient the map, and the leader's role is to provide direction, hence the image I think is fitting. So at its very simplest, the employee needs answers to these 4 questions. The first is, what are we trying to do or accomplish in this specific season or period of time? The second is, what is my part in this as an employee? The third is, how will I get my work done? And then the fourth is, along the way, how will I know how I've done or how did I do? I would suggest that you frame these or consider these as 4 distinct conversations that you need to have with your team. You may do them all at once, you may do them individually or together, do several together in an appropriate setting. Regardless, you need to both communicate and act on each of the 4 points specifically and individually. So let's walk through the 4 points together. First, as a leader, must always, and especially in a crisis, have a vision for the future. So this vision in a crisis is both short-term to get through the crisis now and the longer term for after the crisis. So the leader must have a mindset that's in the moment and in the future. This is important. Employees want the answer to where are we going, especially now. What's our mission? Is it survival, Are we trying to make money, reducing costs? Are we here to help others? Are we trying to protect our organization? I call this our North Star. What is the one singularly important goal for us to focus on right now that we can rally around in order to move forward? The second, the leader needs to reorganize the team. So be crystal clear on the roles and objectives of everyone on your team for this season. Be the delegator and not the doer. Everyone needs to participate and feel valued. Here's a tip. Keeping busy and having productive work to do reduces anxiety. So give people specific things to do. Lead the conversation on how the work should be done in the crisis is the third point. What are the new rules, expectations, and processes in order to be able to get this work done? How will we work together in this new season during the crisis? And lastly, the west point of the compass is how will we check in and update each other on our progress? And how will we measure our success? And perhaps what will we do when all of this is done and we get through this? And maybe you should actually plan a celebration now for the future to give your folks a sense of hope, because a good leader always has an exit strategy. The last thing we need to discuss is how to manage your team in this crisis. Now that your team has a sense of safety and confidence, they know their roles, and you've talked about what needs to get done and the expectations of how you'll work together, the job of the leader switches from that of a coach to that of a quarterback. So the goal here is to lead and manage in such a way as to build and not erode the level of trust in your team. So let me explain that. There are a few realities that you know will be happening during this time of social distancing and working from home. You know that your team members are distracted. You know that they will most likely have a partner and kids at home, all trying to cope and vying for their attention. You know that they are going to throw in a load of laundry in the middle of the day. They're going to stir the crock pot and check the COVID stats. You just need to accept it. This is not the time to micromanage. For some of you, that will be easy, but I acknowledge that for many leaders, especially a few of you like me that grew up in a work culture that believe that if we can't see you, you're not actually working, this can be difficult. Remember how we said a crisis is an opportunity for change? Well, here's another change you may need to get your head around. Mistrust and micromanaging just won't fly. So let me share a few tips on how to work and meet from a distance, technologically speaking. If you follow these steps, you'll provide strong support for your team, you'll build trust, and actually see your team step up and contribute in some pretty new and exciting ways. First is to meet frequently. You need to stay connected with your team. Get your team together on a regular basis and stay connected. And I say daily. Believe it or not, your team actually does want to see and hear from you. So please don't set it and forget it. Meet every single day if possible. All it takes is a 5-minute check-in to keep your team grounded and bonded together. So remember, you're the quarterback calling the plays, and a quarterback does that in a huddle. So it's a great way to start your day. Second point is let them see your face. We gain a lot of information from our visual, facial, and body cues. And so using video conferencing platforms that are now becoming the norm are advantageous over simply phone calls. So this will avoid a lot of misinterpretation when people are already prone to filling in the blanks of the story. The third point is meet both as a team and one-on-one with each team member. As I said, meet daily as a team, but try for weekly at a minimum individually. So put an emphasis on connection and communication. Begin every meeting by checking in on how people are doing. Start with a human aspect and demonstrate empathy before moving on to the business at hand. Next, focus on deliverables and not time. This is not the time to wonder and investigate if people are putting in 40 solid hours a week. When you meet, talk about the work they're doing and not the time that they're spending. And when you talk, ask how they're doing, not what they're doing. Use the time to talk about how they're accomplishing their work, what they need, and what roadblocks are they facing. Which brings us to the last point, is to really focus on how you and the rest of the team can support one another. I believe if you've done the earlier work that you've got clear deliverables for each person, you've got a clear North Star, then it's very easy to have these remote conversations where you check in on a daily basis with your team and a weekly basis individually, and just talk about how we're getting our work done and how we can support one another. So there you have it. You actually have an amazing opportunity, I believe, to show up as a strong leader. And I would say let this crisis shape and stretch and mold you in new ways. So take some chances, try some new things, and just be open. And let me give you a few reminders. We've discussed 4 areas of strength, and let me highlight a few practical applications. They are, first of all, remember this does start with you. So please be realistic about the situation for yourself. Be present in the now and in the future. You need to be out in front of your people. Remember, there is an end to this, and this too shall pass. So you do well to contemplate an exit strategy from this crisis. The second point is show that you care. Let them see that you understand and empathize. So be humble, be vulnerable, be honest, and be empathetic. But most of all, please be available. Your first role as a leader is always to communicate. The third point is there is work to do. So call your people to action. Be organized, have a plan, allow them to step up and contribute. And then the fourth is describe the way to be. Set the standard for how you expect your team to function in this crisis. These are all ways that you can show up as a strong leader. Again, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. If you're a leader, I encourage you to find just 1 or 2 things that you can do to change your trajectory in this crisis. Surviving a crisis demands that you be nimble and you be able to pivot. I hope you found something here to help you with that. If you're an HR professional, I hope you've been armed with some valuable tools to share with your leadership team as you provide valuable support and guidance. Don't underestimate your ability to make an impact on the whole organization through your role. If I can be of any assistance, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm Mark Frizzell. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mark, for sharing your expertise with us. I look forward to reading your thoughts on the follow-up blog post. Thank you as well to our sponsors, Land Solutions and Altitude Communications, to the CCVO team who worked behind the scenes to produce this webinar, and to you, the audience, for spending this time with us. All the best until next time.